Say what's up, Headspaces, Viwe the brother from the ancient mother, with yet another project, album, EP, mixtape review. It's out here in the most poignant SA hip-hop channel. Please check it out. Today I am reviewing two projects in one go. And I'll tell you why it's so important for it to be done in this way. There has been an interesting migration towards piano as a movement in terms of its very nascent but valid and effervescent development in this country. It's become something that has created a very, very beautiful rebirth of direct, authentic sounds and musical rhythms that speak to something exclusively South African. The DNA of Amapiano has summoned a lot of jealousy and envy from genres, quote unquote, which previously held high esteem and power in the commercial scene, namely being, quote unquote, hip hop music, as the title is. And rappers have been taking advantage of Amapiano in different ways. Some have been responding to it with massive envy and hate. Some have been welcoming it. Some have been jumping in the bandwagon. And some of our most pivotal faces and voices have latched onto piano with different intentions and motives. And I want to use two major examples to how this can go right and how this can go wrong. I'm reviewing two projects. One from the artist formerly known as Reason, now known as Sizwe Alakine, and Kwesta and Kabza De Small's projects. What these two projects do together, which makes sense to kind of talk about them in the same breath, is that they're a testament to South African rap's evolution into piano. South African rappers jumping, as it were, and living and swimming within the pool of this generational expression that we are, I feel, blessed to witness right now. And it doesn't come without its tensions. Because rap as an art form is an aspect of hip-hop, which is an expression of the diaspora and carries with it a lot of DNA that we've taken from the American experience, there tends to be hostility when rap is found in other contexts up in South Africa. It's all good and fine for somebody to do a trap song, but oh my god, when they rap on a drum song, it's all good and fine for somebody to interpret boom bap in their own way, but don't they dare give a verse to an Afro pop singer or something like that. And I feel like these very rigid notions of rap, quote unquote real rap, being the rap that can only be found in formats that are traditionally pleasing to the imagination of hip-hop in its American guise, is one of the things that are holding us back. Rap is rap in its commercial sense, mainly because it can literally be adapted to any kind of musical landscape. You can rap on anything if you're good with your cadences. And this ability of being able to rap on anything is a great way of introducing a lot of people into the further exploration of hip-hop as a culture. A lot of us heard rap music, and that was our instant portal to the culture at large. So I, for one, Viwe, feel that the rapping on Amapiano is fundamentally a good thing, because what it does is that it opens up the attention for rap as an art form to be a point of interest. And once people are interested in rapping, it is impossible for them to not stumble upon the history of this culture called hip-hop, especially in the way that it's been done in this particular kind of country. We need to be able to talk openly about how talking about Magesh in the same breath as a pro kid is not weird. We need to be able to say, as much as Double HP was a rapper, Young Stana is a rapper, Focalistic is a rapper. These are rappers. Busiswa is a rapper. Shoma Jozi is a rapper, because the rhythmic chanting, the metric expression of the youth's voice, the deep intimate personal relation with an audience through the musical landscape is rap. Particularly if you're using the power of the human voice to resonate in ways that emphasize speech and rhythm. And what you do is based on that kind of fluid exchange that rap has taught us to have with an audience. So yeah, that's my diatribe. So let's go into the actual nitty-gritties of the review. I don't think I need much of an introduction to who these two rappers are. Reason, from Motif Records fame, catapulted into the stage, basically always been the young rapper co-signed by your favorite rappers, always had that kind of fundamentalist hip-hop backpacker mentality, and easily found himself in a place where he could kind of glide into that commercially by giving us tracks like Bump Their Cheese Up and a lot of subsequent attempts at cracking the code. But there's never really been a moment where we can call Reason's time. And I have different theories on that, but fundamentally I'll sum it up to just being he's not a good songwriter. Reason has not found a way to take South Africa's spirit and kind of sum it up in hooks and choruses that make sense to a broader audience. He's kind of always been the rapper rappers love, and as a result of being that, he's been able to circulate within the game but not really make impact beyond the hip-hop context. Now, when the Sizwe Alakine form came, it was a shock to all of us, mainly because of everything that I've just stated. And for me, I watched as my jaw dropped, thinking to myself, if this man can easily glide on amapiano beats so effortlessly, why on earth did we not see this side of him back when he was massacring rappers and featuring on tracks with Proverb? Why did Reason take so long to speak in a voice that's more indigenous? Why did Reason take so long to show us that and as much as he loves hip-hop, he's got a little bit of that oomph and that groove in him? Why did it take so long for Reason to not appear other than anything else but a kind of reinvention of South Africa's obsession with global marketed trend? How did this all just jump into his consciousness? How did he go from being Dumi's side guy to literally being Maporisa's ghostwriter? It's amazing. And I think the code that is really interesting to pay attention to there is the fact that I think it's because he didn't have faith in what that could do for him. I think he didn't see himself rapping in this way to those beats back then. I think the format that he had been taught would work, the formula that was cultivated in his mind from rising up with some of the South African greats and learning and studying the game, was something that Reason kind of modeled and was trying to do in ways that still made him global. He paid more attention to wanting to kind of relate to the broader world as a South African than tapping into that very South Africanness to start home. And I think that looking beyond the horizon when you're still pretty much in the thick of an engagement with yourself is what allowed his music not to really reach our hearts to a point where we feel it's relatable across the field of our experiences. It was always something heads and hip-hop aficionados alike could appreciate within the commercial context. So this metamorphosis is really him, after years of blood, sweat and tears, realizing it just all goes down to having fun, being true to yourself, and most importantly, being a version of yourself that speaks to what is immediately around you. And I think another thing Amapiano has done is that it's given a lot of SA rappers the confidence to just throw off the shackles of Americanism. Because finally, we have a phenomenon that is global, that has nothing to do with what the West has offered us. In terms of its sound, I mean, we could argue about the culture and the brand and the savannas on top of people's heads, but one thing we can't argue about is the fact that this phenomenon is ours, and it manifests itself in ways that other people can't fully understand if they don't understand us as South Africans. So I think Amapiano is a teachable moment, and has been a teachable moment for many an MC who still kind of felt they need to prescribe rap in ways that still carry ubumelika, because I mean, at some point the most you can do with South African rap is make enough impact to be noticed out there. And I think that's where we go wrong. And I think with this project, with Alakine World, he's diving into a world that ironically isn't really his. It's the world of Amapiano. It's a world that's been constructed, molded and designed by a generation he's not part of. It's a world that really he doesn't feel awkward in, but you can tell that he's pretty much a guest. He didn't build the foundation. He was welcomed into it once it rised up. And sonically what that does is that there's nothing interestingly new about this project. It sounds like everything else happening in Amapiano right now. And again, that's not a bad thing in the capacity of commercial markets and producing music as a kind of capitalist tool of reproduction. Reason is using what works, and he's using it in ways that are safe. But because of that, I don't think we will be talking about this project long enough for it to make a lasting legacy. I think if Sizwe Alakine in this incarnation wants to do more than Reason could have, he will have to understand how to reinterpret himself in ways that are going to introduce a uniqueness that nobody could replicate. Because he's beginning to do it with the flows. And this man is dancing around these piano songs. And as dreary and as long as these songs tend to be, you kind of catch excitable moments because he's enjoying himself and it's really a vibe. This is an unapologetic party piece, and it's done to basically be an ode to where he is right now as a father, as a lover of the culture, and as somebody who finally feels like he can open himself up more. And because of that, Alakine World is not Alakine's world. It's the world Alakine was invited into by piano designers, but it's a world that he inhabits very effortlessly. It's a world that he turns into his world. But if I'm going to rate and review this project really honestly, this is an example of how rappers should not be doing piano. If our attempt is to try and crack the code of piano by using rap as a tool to rake people in, then the emphasis on originality is really going to be important, because everything in piano swims in this kind of hypnotic monotony. And I think people like Maphorisa, through his own kind of rap alter ego, have taught us that the way that you rap in the context of Amapiano should stick out with a whole lot of ingenuity that's designed by you. And I think sonically, because it's pretty much the same formulaic piano design, it doesn't do a lot to allow for Sizwe Alakine to kind of appear within it. He kind of just feels like the backdrop to something that is fundamentally... Okay, excuse me. Sizwe Alakine doesn't allow himself to protrude in this project in the way that he could, because he allows himself to blend in, and because of that he becomes like furniture in the piano world. Furniture that is not really interesting enough for you to notice more than anything else in the house. So I think in this supremely decorated world that is Amapiano, it's going to be very important for rappers to find a way of being that unique designer item that sticks out in a room that's pretty much already filled and inundated with a lot of attention. So Reason, Sizwe Alakine, skilled MC. However, when it comes to originality, something is going to have to happen with the beats. A new kind of piano reinvented through your view is gonna have to be the thing that really works. Doesn't even have to be Amapiano. So I think in contrasting this project and going into what Kwesta and Kabza are doing, there is a sync in trying to know how not to do it and how to do it. How you don't do it is blend in, because by blending in, you're basically sacrificing yourself in an altar of commercial reproduction which won't last beyond the phase of the trend. You won't be seen as a fundamental influencer because you're not adding anything. So this is a project that, to sum it up, really continues with the tradition of what piano is doing, but doesn't add anything new. So as far as really just continuing with traditions, I'd really give this one a 4 out of 10 because it's too typical. And it's too typical because it comes from a painfully skilled artist, somebody who could have found ways to allow for a creative direction in this project to be done in ways where rap and piano find a synthesis that isn't so monotonously drawn from the simple one-liner to catchy hook, jump back again format. There's a way in which an MC like Rizin, who even in this incarnation can still make an impact by showing us that Amapiano is a genome that still has very different aspects that it could go to. So I think because of that, this is a borderline, almost average project because it's in the atmosphere of what's already happening, and it doesn't pull you for its own sake. It pulls you because it pretty much sounds like everything that's out there right now. So in terms of the ultimate criteria of any project, which is telling your own unique story and doing it in ways that allow for the emphasis to shine, it doesn't do any of that. This just feels like a reinterpretation of what's already happening from somebody who's way more talented and practically knows better than that. So enter into how to do it. How to really do it. How to do anything in life is to draw from your inspirations, target your goal, strategically understand how you can insert yourself in a world where maybe foreign or maybe home to you, but either way, it's always about understanding how to introduce the old in new ways. There's so much room for these log drums to go. There's so much to do by experimenting with how piano has a nostalgic flair that reminds us of Kwaito. There's so much to do with the electronic dance music phenomenon and how, technically speaking, even hip-hop music is a form of electronic dance music. There's so much to do with rap in the dance floor. There's so much to learn from taking lyrics and juxtaposing them to minimalistic songs in order for people to try and just feel the vibe. And that's exactly what Kwesta and Kabza have done perfectly. Speak N Vrostaan is a project which encapsulates how to push the barrier. And it's really interesting because it truly shows that these are two innovators at work. On the one side, we have Ukewan, who has worked at developing a style that comes from his Baraping days into now being his own man and his own artist, refined with that smooth bassy texture that everybody has now grown to know and love. Kwesta is an example of the journey of how an artist struggles to eventually land on their voice. He didn't always rap like this. He didn't always land, but when he found the formula, he stuck to it. And he didn't stick to it in ways that were monotonous. You know, Ngutu doesn't sound like Njandin. You know, there is always a growth in how Kwesta is developing this sleepy, woozy, big bass voice. There is a kind of, I'm gonna do what people are used to, but I'm always gonna find ways of reinventing it all the time. And my goodness, when he steps into this, he does it with so much flair. This is basically an ode to Kwaito. And it's an ode to Kwaito in a way that is a salute. It's not that thing that was happening a couple of years ago where rappers were kind of biting old Kwaito lyrics and sampling old Kwaito song. This is truly Kabza and Kwesta sitting down and saying, we're not gonna recycle, we're gonna innovate. We're gonna take the past, but we're not gonna bring it back just because we're cashing in on people's memories. We're actually going to reinvent the past for them in ways that feel refreshingly new. And damn, do they do this. This album is a swing into where we're going in the Afrometric sonic direction. It's the future, it's the present, it's the juxtaposition of dirt and slime and bukasi. It's the typical ghetto fabulous trope, but it's shiny in ways that are alluring to us, in ways that are alluring because they're so familiar, but also because they've been reinvented in ways that don't feel familiar, if that makes sense. Kabza is an incredible producer whose own lyricism is shown through his kind of reincarnation as Papta Mangane. And I love how he and Kwesta make such a beautiful double team. It's like a brotherhood which had to happen, because I feel like in the very same way that their outlooks are always about reinventing, their understanding to Ikasi, South African culture, the depth of what black people in this country really go through on a day-to-day level, and how to transmit that into pure joy is what draws them together. These guys are expert masters of understanding how to alchemize the black Kasi spirit into great music. So where Sizwe Alakine fails at kind of just allowing himself to be anchored in a wave that he is not directing, Kabza and Kwesta decide to take a little bit of the water and refilter it, clean it up, and give it to us in bottles. They are giving us a piece of that vast ocean because they understand which reservoirs to tap into. These guys know where to strike the rock in order for the water to split out. They've done the homework, and most importantly, they did the questioning of the inner artistic soul, which says, am I just going to become just another tool for capitalism to repeat trends, or am I gonna find a way to navigate my own individual identity in every trend which may happen? And I think this is a lesson to all artists. If rap is going to fit, if South African rap is going to fit into the context of anything that is not American, it's going to be from really doing the work about who we are, our history, our music, our movement. And I think the greatest South African rappers have understood that. When we salute AKA, when we salute Kwesta, when we salute Ricky, when we salute Double HP, when we salute Pro Kid, when we salute even Proverb, because again, this is not about the linguistic expression of English. This is about the referencing. It's about pulling from a world that is uniquely inspired by these particular nuances that only South Africans could know. Because the value of the South African story is what will allow for the rest of the world to take us artistically seriously. It's not in taking their stories and finding a way to South Africanize them. It's actually taking the South African story and allowing the world to see the global appeal that it has. Because the global appeal in the South African story is the fact that a people oppressed can resiliently emerge from that with humor, with flair, with power. So I think what these two projects do is that they're a way for us to learn how the same mistakes that we make from taking our own talent and burying it within trend is always going to repeat itself if we don't start checking ourselves. And when we do check ourselves, something very special happens. When we check ourselves, we find this beautiful balance of understanding how to take what works and remodeling it. We've got to give credence and kudos to the risk-taking that Kwesta and Kabza did on this project, because somebody else would have said, in a time where people are hearing the same thing, it's a really risky thing for you to give them something slightly different. But no, they found the code. The code is different doesn't have to be foreign. Different can still happen within the context of what is familiar. You can be different and still feel at home for people. And I think when artists talk about, I want to be different, they always see this different as being adjacent. And I think being different is understanding how to truly and effectively play within the connectivity of what we all know and love as human beings, but also doing that in ways that are very conscious of the sonic stylings around you. So again, different doesn't mean foreign. Because if that's the case, then we'd all be aliens to ourselves. If that's the case, then artistically, if that's the case, then creatively, we're no man's land. Because when we understand how to ground ourselves, then we'll understand how to make ourselves felt to the world. So, where Sizwe Alakine kind of almost nudges to the average place, Kabza and Kwesta, for me, is a freaking solid 9. Because what I think separates these two projects is Speak N Vrostaan is something we're gonna go back to in the same way we go back to Umazola Kamtu, in the same way that we go to Zola's Ndlombe album, in the same way that we go to Tear Gas's Dark or Blue, in the same way that we go back to the Book of Proverbs, in the same way that we go back to this music which is old but still feels so fresh because it was done in ways that speak to the familiarity even when we're different. So SA rappers, if you're watching this has been a manifesto of authenticity yet again from VJ, because it's going to be important, increasingly important, in a world where the reality and the artificial are beginning to blur, in a world where art which was once done by hand is now transferring into something that can be rendered instantly, in a world where we don't know if we're truly human because so much of what we are is robotic and mechanical and digital. In a world where that synthesis, that amalgamation is becoming increasingly confusing, it is so important to start asking yourself the question of who are you and what makes you valuable. I'm VJ, the brother from the Ancient Mother. It's been another Headspace album review. Thank you to South African rap for constantly pushing itself, even in our quote-unquote failures we learn. So shout out to Sizwe Alakine for just growing, for evolving. And shout out to Kwesta, shout out to Kabza for giving us South African dance music for the eons, for the ages. Thank you.